The air in the 45th floor boardroom of Bancroft Partners always had a specific weight. It was a blend of expensive mahogany polish, cooled air conditioning, and the faint, bitter scent of high-grade espresso. I had spent 18 years breathing that air, navigating the quiet currents of corporate power that ran through these halls. My name is Gavin Thorne. I am 55 years old, and as the managing director of M&A, I was the one who kept the firm upright while others chased headlines. I did not shout. In my line of work, the loudest room was usually the one losing money. True leverage existed in the silent spaces between signatures and the unspoken understanding between old partners. I was standing by the floor-to-ceiling glass window, looking down at the gray grid of New York, holding a leather binder that contained the final terms of a $3,000,000 merger. It was a deal I had spent the last 9 months building from a chaotic pile of debt and asset registers into a clean, profitable reality. The door behind me clicked open. It was not the polite knock of a secretary. It was a sharp, aggressive swing. Logan Bancroft walked in. He was 25 years old, wore a stiff blue suit that looked too large for his narrow shoulders, and carried himself with the unearned confidence of someone who had never had to pay for a mistake. He had received his MBA 2 weeks ago, and his uncle, the senior partner Preston Bancroft, had immediately created the title of Chief of Staff for him. It was Logan's first day on the job. Literally, his first hour. "Gavin," he said, his voice cutting through the quiet room like a cheap buzzer. He did not look at the view. He looked at my desk, then at my arm. "Can I help you, Logan?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. I was reviewing the due diligence for the Vance Capital transaction. Oliver Vance is expecting our final draft. Logan walked over to my desk, tapping a thick, newly printed binder he carried under his arm. It was the Bancroft Partners Brand Identity and Excellence Handbook, a 150-page document he had spent his internship compiling. "We are implementing a strict brand alignment starting today," Logan said, pointing a manicured finger at my wrist. "That watch. It is a vintage Rolex Submariner, but the strap is brown leather. The handbook explicitly states in Section 3 that all executive accessories must feature black or metal bands. And that briefcase?" He pointed to my floor where my weathered, dark brown leather satchel sat. "It is distressed leather. It looks old. We do not do distressed here, Gavin. We represent excellence. If our clients see our senior leaders carrying worn-out bags, they think our thinking is worn out." I looked at the watch my father had given me when I passed the bar exam. Then I looked at the leather bag that had traveled with me to Tokyo, London, and Munich, carrying the documents of deals that had built this very firm. I looked back at Logan. His eyes were wide, eager, and desperate for a fight. He wanted to make an example of the oldest wolf in the pack to show the rest of the office that the new rules applied to everyone. "Logan," I said, my voice dropping to a low, quiet register, "in exactly 48 hours, I am meeting with Oliver Vance to close a $3,000,000 deal. This briefcase contains the only copy of the land trust addendums. My watch and my bag are not the issue. The issue is that you are wasting my preparation time." Logan's face turned a sharp, ugly shade of red. He was used to interns who trembled when he spoke and assistants who laughed at his bad jokes. He was not used to a man who looked through him rather than at him. "I am the Chief of Staff," Logan said, his voice rising, drawing the eyes of the analysts working in the glass cubicles outside the door. "I represent the managing board. If you cannot follow the basic standards of Bancroft Partners, how can we trust you to lead its largest transaction?" I almost laughed at the absurdity, but I saw the calculating look in his eyes. He did not care about the leather band on my watch. He wanted a trophy. Firing the most senior dealmaker on his first day would establish his dominance immediately. "Go home, Gavin. Change the watch, replace the bag, and file a formal compliance memo with HR before you return," Logan commanded, crossing his arms. I looked at him for a long moment. I saw the slight shake in his fingers and the deep insecurity hidden behind his expensive haircut. I also realized he had absolutely no idea what my job actually entailed. He thought M&A was just signing papers and drinking champagne. "No," I said simply. "Excuse me?" Logan blinked. I said, "No, I have a transaction to prepare. Please leave my office." "You are being insubordinate," Logan shrieked, his voice cracking. The noise was loud enough to freeze the typing in the outer lobby. Junior associates stood still, coffee cups paused halfway to their mouths. I am relieving you of your duties. You are fired, Gavin. Pack your things. Security will escort you out of the building immediately. I looked out the glass partition. The faces of my team were pale, staring in disbelief. I looked down at the 3,000 contract on my desk. Then, a strange cooling wave of relief washed over me. The constant pressure of carrying this firm on my back for 18 years suddenly vanished. I did not feel angry. I felt incredibly light. All right, I said. Logan blinked, clearly expecting a shouting match, or perhaps for me to call his uncle. What? I said, all right, Logan. You want compliance. I will comply. I closed the leather binder, picked up my personal notebook, and stood up. I did not wait for him to speak. I walked past him, my shoulder brushing his, and went to my desk. He stood in the middle of my office, a look of hollow victory on his face, entirely unaware that he had just pulled the pin on a grenade. He had just fired the only person who understood the complex legal machinery of the Vance family trusts. My desk was a map of 18 years of hard work. I opened the drawers with deliberate, unhurried movements. I took the framed photo of my wife, the brass desk clock given to me by my first mentor, and my personal Rolodex. I placed them inside my distressed leather briefcase. I could see Clara, my assistant, standing near the doorway. Her eyes were wide and she was biting her lip to keep from crying. Mr. Thorne, she whispered, keeping her voice so low it was barely audible. Is this real? Did he really just do that? It is real, Clara, I said, keeping my voice gentle. I picked up a stack of folders containing the preliminary valuation models for the Vance merger. I held them for a moment, then placed them back on the desk right in the center. But the Vance deal, Clara whispered. The signing is in 48 hours. Nobody else knows the transition terms. Nobody else knows how we structured the Montana property liabilities. I am sure Logan has it under control, I said, and the words felt like ice. He has an MBA, Clara. He wrote the handbook. I sat down at my computer, logged out of the secure network, and cleared my local drive. I did not delete company files, but I removed my personal notes and my proprietary valuation macros. Specifically, I revoked the active license key for the Thorne integration model. The model was a complex, copyrighted financial forecasting algorithm I had developed and registered under 17 U.S.C. Section 106 before I ever signed my employment contract with Bancroft Partners. The company had a non-exclusive license to use it, but that license was legally tied to my active employment. The moment my employment ended, the license was revoked. If they attempted to run the Vance merger models without my active key, the system would lock them out of the live calculations. I picked up my leather briefcase, put on my coat, and walked out. The entire floor was dead silent. Analysts kept their heads down, but their eyes followed me to the elevator bank. Logan was waiting there, flanked by two security guards who looked deeply embarrassed. Bob, the head of security, had known me for 15 years. He did not even look at my bag. Make sure he is not carrying any proprietary data, Logan snapped. He is clean, Mr. Bancroft, Bob said, his voice flat. Logan sneered. Good, get him off my floor. I want this outdated attitude out of our company. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. I turned to Logan and gave him a genuine warm smile. Thank you, Logan, I said. What? For showing me where the priorities of this firm now lie, I said. Good luck with Oliver Vance. The Montana clauses require a personal touch. The doors slid closed, cutting off his angry, confused face. I felt the smooth descent of the elevator, and for the first time in a decade, I smiled as I walked out into the afternoon sun. I went to a quiet tavern 2 blocks away, ordered a neat bourbon, and turned my phone completely off. It was 10:30 in the morning, and the clock was ticking. I spent the rest of that Tuesday morning walking through the Metropolitan Museum of Art. For the first time in 18 years, I did not have 3 phones buzzing in my pockets. I stood in front of classic oil paintings, noticing the brushstrokes, the subtle layers of shadow, and the quiet dignity of faces captured centuries ago. It was remarkable how much detail you missed in the world when you were constantly carrying the weight of a multi-billion-dollar corporate merger on your shoulders. I sat on a bench, breathed in the cool, silent air of the gallery, and felt a profound sense of peace. I had built Bancroft Partners. I had secured their reputation, mentored their associates, and brought them to the table with some of the largest family fortunes in the country. And in less than 30 minutes, a 25-year-old with a brand new suit and no understanding of loyalty had swept it all away. At 6 p.m., I returned to my brownstone in Brooklyn. I poured a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon, sat by the fireplace, and finally turned my phone back on. The device immediately began to vibrate. It did not stop for nearly 3 minutes. The screen was a digital avalanche of desperation. I had 22 missed calls from the office, 8 from Bradley, the CFO, 5 from Stewart, our general counsel, and a staggering 45 text messages from Clara. I took a slow sip of my wine and opened Clara's messages. They told the story of the day with absolute clarity. Clara, 11:30 a.m. Gavin, HR just found out about your termination. Stewart is furious. He is locked in a room with Preston Bancroft right now. Nobody knows who authorized this. Logan is hiding in his office. Clara, 12:45 p.m. Oliver Vance's team called for you. Logan intercepted the call. He tried to explain the brand transition and the new handbook rules. Oliver's chief analyst apparently laughed at him and hung up. Bradley is throwing files. Clara, 2:30 p.m. Gavin, the Thorn integration model has crashed. IT says the database is locked. They said the license key was automatically revoked when HR processed your termination. Logan is screaming at the IT director, telling him to bypass the lock. He says it is federally encrypted and they cannot touch it without risking a copyright lawsuit. Clara, 4:15 p.m. Gavin, Stewart is asking everyone for your private number. They realized you are the only one who has the signed physical addendums for the Montana land assets. Please call me, everyone is losing their minds. I smiled, swirling the dark red liquid in my glass. The Thorn integration model was my crown jewel. It was not just a spreadsheet. It was an advanced forecasting algorithm that analyzed the tax liabilities of complex family trusts, factoring in environmental clawbacks and historical land grants. I had spent 5 years writing it on my own time before I ever joined Bancroft Partners. I had registered it with the United States Copyright Office under 17 U.S.C. Section 106. When I joined the firm, my employment contract granted them a non-exclusive license to use the model, but the contract explicitly stated that the license was active only during my tenure as a full-time employee. The moment Logan fired me, that license died. By continuing to run their merger analysis on my model, Bancroft Partners was committing willful copyright infringement under federal law, exposing them to damages of up to $150,000 per violation. More importantly, they had no way to update the numbers for the Friday signing. Next, I opened an email from Stewart, the general counsel. Subject: Urgent administrative misunderstanding. Gavin, it read. We need to speak immediately. There has been a catastrophic breakdown in protocol regarding your employment status. Logan Bancroft acted without the authority of the board. Please call my cell. We can structure a reinstatement contract tonight, with a full apology and a retroactive bonus. We cannot let an administrative error derail the Vance merger. I deleted the email. It was typical of Stewart. When a senior partner made a mistake, it was a strategy. When a junior employee made a mistake, it was a firing. But when a nepotism hire broke the company, it was called an administrative error. I walked over to the antique roll-top desk in the corner of my study. I reached into the secret compartment beneath the drawer and pulled out a small brass key. The lock opened with a heavy, satisfying click. Inside, resting on a bed of green felt, was a worn leather folder embossed with the words Vance Family Trust, Confidential Addendums. Most people in the city thought I was hired by Bancroft Partners because of my Ivy League degree or my transaction history. The truth was simpler. I was part of the package. My father had been the personal attorney for Oliver Vance's father 40 years ago. I grew up playing on the lawns of the Vance estate in Connecticut while our fathers sat in the study, drinking scotch and structuring trust funds that would survive generations. Oliver Vance did not trust corporate banks or slick, young executives with fresh degrees. He trusted legacy. He trusted blood. When he decided to sell Vance Capital's real estate division, he made it clear that he would only negotiate through Bancroft Partners if I personally managed the transition. I was the bridge between the old world of quiet, family wealth and the cold institutional capital of the modern market. I opened the folder and took out a single card. On it was written a private mobile number. It was not Oliver's office line or his secretary's desk. It was the phone he kept in his breast pocket. I dialed the number. It rang twice before a deep, gravelly voice answered. "Vance," he said. "Oliver, it is Gavin," I said. There was a brief silence on the line, followed by the sound of a chair shifting. "Gavin," he said, his voice instantly warming. "I was expecting your call this afternoon. My analyst said they got some child on the phone who claimed you were unavailable. What is happening over there?" "I have been terminated, Oliver," I said, keeping my voice level. The silence on the other end was absolute. It lasted so long I could hear the faint hum of the city streets outside my window. "Terminated," Oliver repeated, the word cold and sharp. "On what grounds?" "A dress code violation," I said. "Apparently, my vintage Rolex and my leather briefcase did not align with the new brand guidelines, and the nephew of the senior partner felt it was necessary to make an example of me." Oliver let out a short, dry laugh that sounded more like a growl. "A dress code violation. 2 days before a 3,000 signing. And who is managing the Montana land assets now?" "Logan Bancroft believes the files on the central server are sufficient," I replied. Oliver scoffed. "Those server files list the Montana ranch as a non-performing asset with a $150,000 environmental liability. If his system flags it, they will liquidate it. They do not know that my grandfather is buried on that land, or that the conservation easement we negotiated protects the entire valley. They are amateurs, Gavin." "Correct," I said. Oliver paused. "Gavin, are you free for breakfast tomorrow?" "I am currently unemployed, Oliver. I am free all day." "Excellent, the Pierre Hotel. 8 a.m. and Gavin?" "Yes, Oliver. Do not sign anything with Bancroft. No severance, no non-disclosure extensions, nothing." "I would not dream of it," I said. "Good. Sleep well, Gavin. We have work to do." I hung up the phone. My heart was beating with a slow, steady rhythm. I had crossed the line. I was no longer just a dismissed employee waiting for a lawyer to negotiate an exit package. I was an active player in a game that was about to cost my former firm everything they had built. I locked the roll-top desk and sat back down by the fire. Across the street, the lights of the city danced against the dark sky, completely indifferent to the panic that was currently consuming the 45th floor of Bancroft Partners. I took another sip of my wine and smiled. The fire was warm, and the night was just beginning. The Pierre Hotel served breakfast with a hushed, clockwork precision that made the dining room feel like a sanctuary for quiet power. It was the kind of place where fortunes were discussed in whispers and corporate takeovers were structured over soft-boiled eggs. Oliver Vance was already seated in a corner booth when I arrived at 7:55 a.m. He looked exactly as he had for the last 15 years. Immaculate in a bespoke charcoal suit, his silver hair neatly combed back, and his dark eyes sharp and observant. We did not discuss the menu. We did not discuss the weather. My legal team received a call from Logan Bancroft yesterday afternoon, Oliver said, buttering a slice of rye toast with surgical care. "Oh," I said, taking a sip of my black tea. "Yes," Oliver replied, a cold smile touching his lips. The boy sounded out of breath. "He told my lead counsel that you had been rushed to the hospital with severe exhaustion. He claimed you had fully briefed him on all the transition files before you collapsed, and that he was prepared to lead the signing on Friday." The audacity of the lie was breathtaking but not surprising. In the world of high-stakes acquisitions, amateurs always try to manage the clock. If I was sick, the contract allowed for a temporary extension. But if I was fired, it triggered a key man disclosure clause. Under the terms of our exclusivity agreement, Bancroft Partners was legally obligated to report any changes to key transition personnel within 24 hours. Failure to do so made the agreement voidable at our discretion. Logan was trying to buy time to charm Oliver's team, hoping he could figure out the transaction details before the signing. "He thinks I am a checkbook with legs," Oliver said, wiping his fingers on a linen napkin. "He does not understand that when I buy a company, I am not buying their servers or their brand handbooks. I am buying the people who know how the assets work. My assistant, Wyatt, did some research last night. Apparently, the board at Bancroft Partners was not notified of your termination until this morning. Bradley, the CFO, is reportedly throwing office furniture. The senior partners are in a state of absolute panic." "That sounds like Bradley," I remarked. "Here's the situation, Gavin," Oliver said, leaning forward. "I do not do business with amateurs, and I certainly do not do business with liars. The merger with Bancroft Partners is dead. I am going to kill it tomorrow morning. but I still need to restructure my real estate holding company, and I still want you to run the transition." He reached into his leather portfolio and pulled out a thick, cream-colored document. "This is an offer for the position of Chief Investment Officer at Vance Capital. The compensation is double what Bancroft was paying you. The equity structure is guaranteed, and you report directly to me. Your first task will be to oversee the liquidation of Bancroft Partners' M&A division when they default on their outstanding loans next month." I looked at the contract. It was not just a job offer. It was complete liberation. It was the ultimate leverage. I picked up the pen and signed my name. "There is just one thing," Oliver added, a shark-like grin spreading across his weathered face. "I have not officially canceled the signing meeting yet. It is still scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. "Why the delay?" I asked. "Because I want to see the look on Logan Bancroft's face when he tries to explain why his hospitalized managing director is sitting on the other side of the table," Oliver said. "I want you in the lobby of their building at 9:15. I will handle the meeting upstairs. You just handle the exit." I felt a cold shiver of anticipation. "I will be there," I said. That afternoon, I walked past the Bancroft Partners Tower on Madison Avenue. I stayed on the opposite side of the street, wearing dark sunglasses, watching the frantic activity through the glass walls of the 45th floor. Figures were pacing in the hallways. The lights remained on long after the sun began to set. It looked like an anthill that had been kicked. I checked my personal email. There was a direct message from Logan's private account. Subject: Personal. Gavin. Gavin, it read. "Please call me. We need to resolve this." I had a stress reaction. The pressure of the transition was immense, and I made an emotional decision. My uncle is asking for the Montana files, and the IT department says they cannot access the valuation models without a licensing override. Let's sit down and discuss a consulting fee to clear this up. I deleted it. In the major leagues, there are no takebacks. Logan had read the handbook, but he had failed to read the room. The next morning, the sky was a heavy, bruised purple, threatening rain. I sat in a corner booth at The Grind, a coffee shop directly opposite the entrance of the Bancroft Partners building. It was 8:30 a.m. Wyatt, Oliver's assistant, sat across from me. We had a stack of onboarding papers on the table. "Oliver is on his way," Wyatt said, checking his watch. "He is 5 minutes out. He asked me to ensure you were visible." I looked through the glass window of the coffee shop. The lobby of the Bancroft Tower was clearly visible. Pacing back and forth near the security desk was a figure in a bright white suit. Logan Bancroft. He looked disheveled. His tie was slightly crooked, and he was waving his hands frantically at a receptionist. He was trying to establish himself as the gatekeeper, waiting to greet Oliver Vance personally. Suddenly, Logan stopped. He looked out the glass doors of the lobby, scanning the street. His eyes locked on the coffee shop window. Even from 50 yards away, I saw him freeze. He recognized me. More importantly, he recognized Wyatt. He knew Wyatt was Oliver's right-hand man, and he was sitting with me, laughing, handing me a pen. Logan pressed his face against the glass of the lobby. He pulled out his phone and started dialing. My phone, resting on the wooden table, remained silent. I had blocked his number 12 hours ago. "He is dialing," I noted, taking a slow sip of my coffee. "Let him sweat," Wyatt said, not even turning around to look. "Panic makes people sloppy, and Oliver Vance hates sloppy." I watched Logan turn to the receptionist, pointing at us, likely screaming for building security to do something. The receptionist simply shook her head and looked away. Logan spun around and ran toward the elevator bank, likely rushing back to the 45th floor to warn his uncle and the board. But there was nothing he could say that would save him. The truth was already in the building. Wyatt gathered our papers and stood up. "You are officially on the payroll, Gavin. Welcome to Vance Capital. Now, per Oliver's instructions, wait here for exactly 15 minutes. Then cross the street and enter the lobby. Be the ghost at their feast." I watched a sleek black sedan pull up to the curb. The driver opened the door and Oliver Vance stepped out. He buttoned his double-breasted jacket, checked his cuffs, and looked up at the Bancroft Tower with the cold, calculating expression of a demolition expert. He did not look at the coffee shop. He walked straight through the revolving doors. It was showtime. The lobby of the Bancroft Partners building was designed to project an image of absolute stability. 3 stories of white marble, a massive water feature that hummed with a low, expensive vibration, and polished steel columns that reflected the gray morning light. I walked through the revolving doors at exactly 9:15 a.m. The cool, air-conditioned air hit my face, carrying the familiar scent of the building I had worked in for nearly 2 decades. I did not rush. I walked with a slow, measured stride, my heels clicking on the marble floor. I was wearing my charcoal wool suit, my vintage Rolex with the brown leather strap, and my distressed leather briefcase was slung over my shoulder. The scene near the security turnstiles was already playing out like a theater production. Oliver Vance stood in the center of the atrium, refusing to touch the elevator buttons. He was flanked by his assistant, Wyatt, and 3 security guards. Standing opposite him were Bradley, our CFO, Stewart, the general counsel, and Logan Bancroft. Logan was sweating through his white suit, his hands waving in the air as he spoke. He looked slightly disheveled, his hair no longer perfectly in place. I stopped about 15 feet away, standing near a large marble pillar. I was close enough to hear every word, but far enough to remain out of their immediate line of sight. "Mr. Vance, we have everything prepared in the 45th floor conference room," Logan was saying, his voice thin and tight, echoing off the high stone walls. "The digital agreements are ready for your signature. As I mentioned, Gavin Thorne is currently indisposed. He was hospitalized late Tuesday evening due to sudden exhaustion. We did not want to alarm your team, but I have been fully briefed on all the files. I am prepared to sign on his behalf." Oliver Vance did not move. He did not look at the elevator. He simply stared at Logan with a flat, cold expression. "Hospitalized," Oliver repeated, his voice carrying clearly across the quiet lobby. "Yes," Logan said, nodding quickly, trying to force a professional smile. "A very sudden medical emergency." But he assured us he had completed the transition models. "It is a minor delay, but we are fully prepared." Oliver reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his private mobile phone. He tapped the screen once. "That is interesting, Logan," Oliver said, "because I just received a message from Gavin. He says the espresso at the coffee shop across the street was excellent, and he is currently standing right behind you." Logan froze. The blood drained from his face so quickly he looked like a statue in the marble lobby. Bradley and Stewart both snapped their heads around, their eyes wide. I stepped out from behind the pillar and walked forward. I did not say a word. I simply looked at them, my vintage leather briefcase in hand. The silence that fell over the lobby was heavy enough to crush a car. Logan stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "You," he whispered, pointing a shaking finger at my chest. "You are supposed to be. You are lying. You were fired." The words spilled out of him before his brain could stop them. Bradley, the CFO, turned on Logan, his eyes bulging. "You did what?" Bradley roared. Logan took a step back, his back hitting the security desk. He was insubordinate. Logan stammered, looking at Stewart for support. Stewart looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. He violated Section 3 of the new Brand Excellence Guidelines. His watch strap was brown leather, and his bag was distressed. He refused to comply with my directive on my first day. It was a clear infraction. Oliver Vance let out a dry, harsh laugh. It was a sound that had silenced boardrooms for 40 years. "You fired the managing director of M&A, the man who structured the entire transition of my family trusts, because of the color of his watch strap." Oliver looked at Bradley, then at Stewart. "Is this the leadership I am buying? Is this the judgment I am investing in?" "Mr. Vance, please," Bradley said, stepping forward, his hands raised in a desperate gesture. "This is a complete misunderstanding. Logan is new to the executive team. He acted without the board's knowledge. We can reinstate Gavin immediately. We will offer him a senior partnership and a full compliance exemption." Oliver raised his hand, cutting Bradley off mid-sentence. "Gavin," Oliver said, looking at me, "are you currently employed by Bancroft Partners?" "No, Oliver," I said, keeping my voice calm and clear. "My employment was terminated for cause on Tuesday morning at 10:09 a.m. effective immediately." "Then you have no authority to sign these contracts," Oliver said. "None," I replied. Oliver turned back to Bradley. "If your firm cannot manage its own personnel for 48 hours without committing fraud and lying to its clients, I cannot trust you with my capital. The merger is off. The exclusivity agreement is terminated for failure to disclose key man changes. Good day, gentlemen." Oliver turned on his heel and walked toward the revolving doors flanked by Wyatt. The moment the glass doors spun shut behind him, the lobby of Bancroft Partners erupted. Bradley turned on Logan, his face turning a deep, dangerous shade of purple. "You fired him?" Bradley screamed, his voice cracking with rage. The acoustics of the marble lobby amplified his voice into a thunderclap. "You fired the lead negotiator of a $3,000 Zerazin transaction because of a briefcase? Do you have any idea what you just did? That was our valuation. That was our stock price. That was my retirement." Logan shrunk back, looking small and terrified. "He was insubordinate," Logan whispered, tears of panic welling in his eyes. "He did not respect the title." "You do not have a title anymore," Bradley shouted, spittle flying from his lips. "You are suspended, effective immediately. Get out of my sight. Go to your uncle's office and sit there. If you send a text, if you write an email, or if you speak to a single reporter, I will personally sue you for breach of fiduciary duty and ruin your family name." Logan let out a choked sob, turned, and ran toward the service elevators, his heels clicking frantically on the stone floor. Bradley took a deep breath, smoothing down his tie, and turned to me with a plastic, desperate smile. "Gavin," he said, his voice trembling. "Gavin, please. We can fix this. The damage is severe, but we can call Oliver back. We will fire Logan today. We will give you a senior vice president title, a 20% raise and stock options. Just pick up the phone, call Oliver. Tell him it was a mistake." I looked at Bradley. I had worked beside him for 18 years. He had never once asked about my family. He had never once thanked me when I saved the firm's quarterly earnings. He only cared now because the ship was sinking, and he was about to go down with it. "I cannot do that, Bradley," I said. "Why not?" Bradley pleaded. "Name your number. We will double the salary." "It is not about the money," I said. I reached into my leather briefcase and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. "What is that?" Bradley asked, his voice hollow. "My formal resignation," I said, "or rather my acknowledgement of my termination. You cannot rehire me, Bradley, because as of 8 a.m. this morning I have accepted a new position." Bradley's face went completely blank. Who could possibly hire you this quickly?" "The client," I said. I saw the realization hit him like a physical blow. He took a half step back, his hand gripping the edge of the security desk to steady himself. You are working for Vance?" "I am the director of strategic acquisitions for Vance Capital," I said. "Which means, Bradley, that if you want to salvage any portion of this firm, when your loans default next month, you will be negotiating directly with me." I checked my watch. The brown leather band looked perfect in the light. "But not today," I said. "Today, I am going to buy a new briefcase. This one has too many corporate memories." I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving Bradley standing alone in the silent, cold marble lobby. Behind me, I could hear him screaming into his phone, calling the board, calling the lawyers, calling anyone who would listen. But the line was already dead. The empire had begun to fall. 3 days later, the financial world began to react to the silence. Bancroft Partners' stock plummeted 18% in 72 hours. Rumors of a management crisis and a failed multi-billion-dollar merger circulated in the morning columns. The banking syndicates that held Bancroft's operational debt began asking hard questions about their liquidity. In a desperate bid to stop the bleeding, the managing board of Bancroft Partners begged Oliver Vance for one final meeting. They promised that all obstacles had been removed. They promised that the deal could be restructured under any terms he desired. They simply needed him to come back to the table to reassure the market. Oliver agreed on a single condition. The entire executive committee, including the senior partner Preston Bancroft, the CFO Bradley, and Logan Bancroft, had to be present. The boardroom on the 45th floor was freezing, the air conditioning running at maximum capacity, but the air felt heavy and hot. The partners were sweating through their shirts. Logan sat at the very end of the mahogany table, looking incredibly small. His bright white suit was gone, replaced by a drab, ill-fitting dark gray one. His uncle, Preston Bancroft, sat 3 seats away, staring straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge his nephew's presence. The double doors opened. Oliver Vance walked in first, followed by his assistant Wyatt and then me. I walked in last. I was wearing a sharp, custom black suit with gold buttons, and I carried a brand new, polished black leather briefcase. A collective, sharp gasp went around the room. Logan's head snapped up, his eyes widening in absolute horror. Gavin, Preston Bancroft stammered, half rising from his chair, before Oliver motioned for him to sit. We believe this meeting is to discuss the reinstatement of the 3,000,000 merger, the CEO began, his voice trembling as he looked at Oliver. Oliver sat at the head of the table. He did not open his leather portfolio. He did not look at the printed contracts they had laid out. I am not here to merge, Oliver said, his voice flat and steady. I am here to make an asset purchase offer for Bancroft Partners M&A division and client portfolio at 30 cents on the dollar. 30 cents? Bradley, the CFO, shrieked, slamming his hand on the table. That is outright robbery. The valuation was 3,000 mils and thousand. We have the data models. That was the price when you had competent leadership, Oliver said coldly. That was the price when Gavin Thorne was managing the transition. Now you have chaos, and your debt is about to be called. Gavin is now my director of strategic acquisitions. He has spent the last 48 hours auditing your assets. He tells me your firm is hollow. The room turned to look at me, their eyes filled with a mixture of betrayal and desperation. They expected loyalty from the man they had discarded over a dress code guidelines infraction. We ran the numbers, I said, keeping my voice calm and professional. Without the Montana addendums, which remain my personal intellectual property, the environmental liabilities on the Vance estate clause back 45 mils and thousands in value. Furthermore, your IT department continued to run financial projections using the Thorne Integration Model database throughout Wednesday and Thursday. As I am no longer an employee, your license to that software is officially terminated. Your continued use constitutes a direct violation of federal copyright law under 17 U.S.C. Section 106. My attorneys are filing a federal copyright infringement lawsuit in the Southern District of New York this afternoon, seeking statutory damages of $150,000 per violation. Preston Bancroft's face turned the color of ashes. Gavin, please, he whispered. We are old friends, your father and mine. That is not the end of it, Preston, I continued, leaning forward. In his haste to submit the SEC due diligence disclosures, before the deadline, your nephew Logan forged my digital signature and initials on the environmental compliance certificates to cover up the fact that I had been terminated. We have the server logs proving the signature was uploaded from Logan's terminal while I was off the network. Under California Penal Code Section 470, this forgery makes the entire SEC filing void ab initio. It is null and void from the very beginning. Bancroft Partners has submitted fraudulent filings to a federal regulatory agency. The SEC investigation will begin by Monday. The room went completely silent. It was a silence so deep you could hear the hum of the computers in the wall. The partners stared at Logan with a hatred that was palpable. Logan looked as if he might faint, his hands trembling on the table. The CEO looked at me, his eyes pleading. Gavin, we can fix this. We will fire Logan today. We will strip him of his family credentials. We will give you a seat on the managing board. We will give you Preston's office. Just tell Oliver to sign the original merger agreement. Save the firm, Gavin. The room held its breath. Every eye was locked on me, waiting for the word that would determine the survival of Bancroft Partners. I looked at Bradley. I looked at Preston. And finally, I looked at Logan, who was staring at the table, completely broken. I smiled. It was the smile of a man who had spent 18 years building a house, only to watch the owner's nephew set it on fire. Sorry, gentlemen, I said softly. He fired me. No deal. Oliver Vance stood up and buttoned his jacket. You heard the director. The offer is 30 cents on the dollar. You have until 5 p.m. today to sign the asset transfer. If you decline, we will wait for the bankruptcy court to auction your assets next month, and we will buy them for 10 cents. Good day. Oliver turned and walked out of the room. I followed him, my new leather briefcase in hand. I did not look back. I did not need to. The silence behind us was the sound of a crumbling empire. As we waited at the elevator bank, Oliver handed me a blue folder. Good work, Director, he said, his voice warm. Thank you, Oliver, I said. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. I stepped inside, and for the first time in 18 years, I did not look in the brass reflection to check if my tie was straight or my buttons were aligned. I knew they were perfect. We went down, leaving the wreckage on the 45th floor behind us, and I finally took a deep, clean breath. You are the real stars of this corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe or I will turn off the database keys to your office memories.